AITA for leaving my boyfriend at a restaurant after he joked about proposing to someone else. I, 27F, dated Mark, 29M, for a little over 3 years. We lived together for the last year and a half. On paper, our relationship looked solid. We met through mutual friends at a birthday party, and he was charming in that effortless way that makes you feel chosen. He remembered small details about me. He texted first. He planned thoughtful dates. He told everyone I was different from the other women he dated. That line should have been my first warning. But at the time, it felt flattering. For context, I've always been pretty independent. I have a stable job in marketing, I pay my own bills, I'm close with my family, and I don't really tolerate disrespect. Or, at least I thought I didn't. Mark was charismatic. The kind of guy who could walk into a room and have everyone laughing in 5 minutes. People loved him. My friends loved him. My parents liked him. He had that confident, slightly sarcastic personality that can be attractive until it isn't. The first year was genuinely good. But looking back, there were cracks. He had this habit of making jokes that were just slightly too sharp. If I got dressed up for a date, he'd say, "Wow, who are you trying to impress?" with a smirk. If I talked about a promotion I was working toward, he'd say, "Don't forget about me when you're a big shot executive." If I didn't laugh, he'd follow it with, "Relax, I'm kidding. You're so sensitive." It was always framed as humor. And I always told myself I was overthinking it. Over time, the jokes shifted from playful to pointed. He'd compare me to his ex occasionally, never directly, but enough. My ex used to cook this amazing lasagna. Not that yours is bad. You know, just never got this stressed about little things. I'd call him out sometimes. He'd roll his eyes. "You're reading into it." Then he'd hug me, kiss my forehead, tell me I was his favorite person. And I'd feel silly for bringing it up. By year 2, we moved in together. It made sense financially and emotionally. Or so I thought. That's when I started noticing the pattern more clearly. Whenever we were around other women, especially attractive ones, he'd shift. He'd get a little louder, a little more performative. He'd make comments like, "If I wasn't taken," or "My girlfriend won't let me." He'd say it jokingly, with a grin, always with a glance at me to gauge my reaction. And if I looked uncomfortable, God, it's a joke. You know I'd never actually do anything. But here's the thing. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like he enjoyed watching me squirm. I talked to him about it multiple times over the years. Each time it followed the same script. I calmly explain that it bothers me. He says I'm insecure. I try to explain it's about respect. He says I'm trying to control him. I apologize for overreacting. It became a loop, and I slowly got quieter. The night of the restaurant happened 3 weeks ago. It was a Friday. He'd gotten a small bonus at work and suggested we go out somewhere nice. We hadn't been on a proper date in months. I was genuinely excited. I wore a dress he'd once said he loved. Did my hair. I wanted it to feel special. The restaurant was one of those upscale but not formal places. Dim lighting. Candle on the table. The kind of place couples go when they're celebrating something. For the first hour, things were actually good. We ordered wine. We talked about a possible vacation. He held my hand across the table. And then his coworker showed up. Her name was Lauren, 26F. I'd heard about her before. She was new at his job. Really smart, he'd said. A little intense. She happened to be there with a friend and stopped by to say hello. Mark lit up. Like, visibly lit up. He stood up to hug her. Not a quick side hug. A full, 2-arm hug. He introduced me quickly. "This is my girlfriend, by the way," and then immediately turned back to her. They started talking about work. Inside jokes. A presentation they'd done together. I sat there smiling politely. After a minute or two, Lauren laughed and said, "Okay, I'll let you get back to your date. Enjoy your weekend." And this is where everything shifted. Mark looked at her, then at me, then back at her, and said, "Honestly, if things don't work out here, maybe I'll propose to you instead." He laughed. Lauren laughed awkwardly. I didn't. He kept going. I mean, she's great and all, but you and I do make a pretty good team. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. It wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't obviously ridiculous. It was delivered lightly but not absurdly. Lauren looked uncomfortable. She did that tight smile people do when they're not sure how to react. I waited for him to say he was joking. He didn't. He just smirked. I felt heat rush to my face. My hands were shaking slightly under the table. I said calmly, "That's not funny." He blinked at me like I'd just said something strange. "It's a joke." "It's not," I replied. Lauren mumbled something about needing to get back to her table and walked away. And then it was just us. He sighed dramatically. "You cannot be serious right now." I asked him what was funny about implying he'd rather marry his coworker. He rolled his eyes. "Oh my God. It was banter." "Banter?" I repeated. "You're embarrassing me." That's when something inside me went very, very quiet. Embarrassing him. Not hurting me. Not disrespecting me. Embarrassing him. He leaned in and lowered his voice. "Don't start a scene." I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't cried. I hadn't done anything dramatic. But he said it like I was unstable. And suddenly I realized something. This wasn't new. He'd been doing this for years. Small comments. Testing boundaries. Seeing how much I'd tolerate. I looked at him across the candlelit table and felt tired. Not angry. Not hysterical. Just done. The waiter came by to ask if everything was okay. Mark smiled and said, "Perfect." I said nothing. We sat in silence for a minute. Then I picked up my purse. He frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Over that?" "Yes." "You're insane." Candlelight flickered across the table, highlighting the faint smirk that I'd come to recognize all too well, the one he wore whenever he felt he had the upper hand. "You're insane," he said again, louder this time. I froze for a split second. I expected the usual eye roll, the dramatic sigh, the flippant dismissal. But then he moved. Slowly at first, then with more confidence, Mark reached out and grabbed my hand. His fingers curled around mine with a kind of possessive force I had never liked but had tolerated before, mostly because I thought he was just being impulsive. "Wait, come on," he said, leaning forward. "Don't just leave like this. Sit down, let's talk." It was at that moment that something snapped inside me. I pulled back sharply, jerking my hand free, my chest tightening with a heat I couldn't contain. This wasn't about a joke anymore. It wasn't about embarrassment or social etiquette. The raw truth hit me. He thought he could control me. He thought he could physically stop me from leaving. And suddenly, years of subtle manipulations, comparisons, and banter felt like a tsunami, crashing down all at once. "Don't touch me," I spat, my voice low and cutting. "Keep your hand where it belongs." For the first time, I saw real uncertainty flash across his face. His confident, smug demeanor faltered. I didn't wait. I stood, grabbed my coat, and left the restaurant. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a shockwave, washing over me in reality. Every moment I had doubted myself, every time I had apologized for overreacting to him, every time I had wondered if I was imagining the subtle power plays, it all felt validated in that instant. By the time I reached home, my hands were shaking, but my mind was calm. For the first time in months, I felt resolved. I didn't need to think about whether I'd be making the right decision. The right decision was clear. I was done. I opened our apartment door and flicked on the lights. Everything felt different. The air smelled faintly of Mark's cologne, which normally made me feel warm and safe, but tonight it felt oppressive. I moved to the bedroom and started packing my things. Clothes, toiletries, books, anything that belonged to me. The lease was almost up. I noticed it as I pulled a stack of folded sweaters into a suitcase. It felt like a universe sign, a strange and perfect alignment. It was as if fate itself had arranged the timing to match my resolve. The lease ending meant no complicated negotiations, no awkward halfway splits. It was clean. It was final. I zipped up the last suitcase, just as I heard the key turn in the front door. Mark stepped inside. His eyes immediately caught the open suitcases on the bed. A small smirk, almost incredulous, flickered across his face. Really? He scoffed, dropping his bag. Is this necessary? Are you serious right now? I didn't flinch. I stood tall. I felt nothing but determination. Yes. I'm leaving. I've had enough. My voice was steady, even though my heart was pounding. Mark's smirk deepened. He took a slow step toward me, arms loose at his sides. You're just throwing a tantrum, he said casually. I mean, come on, suitcases? Really? This is ridiculous. Not a tantrum. Not ridiculous. I've been patient for years. I've tolerated your little jokes, your comparisons, your manipulations, and I'm done. He raised an eyebrow, obviously amused, and leaned against the wall. Manipulations? Come on. You're being dramatic. I stepped closer, my fists clenched lightly at my sides. I'm being realistic. And I'm leaving. If you think I'm going to stay and let you treat me this way for the rest of my life, you're wrong. For a moment, he looked as though he might argue, might try to stop me again, but I had already rehearsed this in my head 100 times. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the suitcases and walked out the door, refusing to look back. The drive to my friend Ava's house was a blur. Every mile, every red light, every passing car felt like shedding the weight of years spent under Mark's control. When I arrived at Ava's, she opened the door before I could even knock, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the suitcases. Oh my God, she breathed, pulling me inside. What happened? I sank onto her couch, letting the familiar warmth of her apartment wash over me. Ava has always been like a sister, the kind of friend who sees through all pretenses and calls you out when you need it. She didn't say a word at first. She just handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me. When I finally started talking, recounting the dinner, the joke, the hand grab, she went white with anger on my behalf. You did exactly the right thing, she said. I nodded, taking a shaky sip of tea. I don't know why I didn't leave sooner. Every red flag was there. Every time I felt embarrassed, every time I felt controlled, I ignored it. I made excuses. Ava shook her head. You gave him 3 years. And the second he tries to control you physically, you got out. That's more than most people can do. I felt a flicker of relief, mixed with lingering anger. The adrenaline hadn't fully worn off. My hands still trembled slightly as I recounted the details, every little smirk, every dismissive comment, every little moment where he had made me question myself. You know what? Ava said, her voice firm, almost like a verdict. You're not just leaving him. You're reclaiming yourself. And if he thinks you're going to come back, he's delusional. I smiled weakly, but inside, a sense of clarity settled over me. This wasn't just leaving Mark. This was taking my life back, piece by piece. We spent the rest of the night talking. I told her about how I felt during the restaurant incident, how years of little manipulations had chipped away at my confidence, and how the hand grab had finally ignited a fury that I couldn't ignore. Ava listened, interrupted occasionally to scold me for putting up with him so long, but mostly just held space for me to speak. By the time I settled in at Ava's apartment for the night, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Mark's era of control over me was over. Update. That first night at Ava's apartment was quiet. We sat on the couch, sipping tea, the city lights spilling through the window. My phone sat on the coffee table, face down, deliberately ignored. I knew it would start buzzing soon. Mark's calls and messages weren't going to stop because I left. But I wanted the silence first. I wanted to breathe. Sure enough, by 10:30 p.m., it began. A ping. Another. And another. Where are you? Answer me. You can't just leave like this. I ignored them all. But as the night went on, they shifted in tone. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I promise I'll change. It was just a joke. Please don't leave me. The smug, calculated charm I knew so well was thinly veiled as remorse. But I could hear the undertone. He wanted me back, but only on his terms. My fury returned each time I read one of his messages. By the next morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't let him manipulate me into guilt or doubt. I felt lighter, as though each ignored ping was a small victory reclaiming a piece of myself he had chipped away at over the years. Ava had been incredible. She reminded me of my worth, listened to my frustrations, and didn't let me dwell on what-ifs. For the first time in months, I started seeing clearly. I hadn't lost anything by leaving Mark. I'd regained myself. 2 days later, Ava suggested we go out. She wanted to lift my spirits. Just dinner, just the two of us. No pressure. Just food, wine, and forgetting about him for a few hours, she said. I agreed, even though the idea of eating in public still made me tense. That evening, Ava suggested a trendy restaurant she liked, and as we walked in, I noticed a group already seated near the corner. One of them caught my attention immediately. A man was laughing with his family. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, easy smile. He looked gentle, kind in a way that made me pause. Ava noticed my glance. "That's Ryan," she said casually. "He's one of my close friends." We approached, and Ava introduced us. "This is Ryan. Ryan, this is my friend." We shook hands, and I felt a spark of something unexpected, calm, yet comforting. We exchanged a few words, small talk about the restaurant, the menu, life in general. Ryan had a way of listening, of making you feel heard, even in casual conversation. "I'll leave you to your table," he said, gesturing to his family. "Enjoy your dinner." I nodded, but even as I watched him walk away, there was a subtle warmth lingering, something in the way he had greeted me and genuinely seemed interested in how I was feeling. Dinner went surprisingly well. I realized my chest didn't feel so heavy for the first time in days. As we left the restaurant, I was surprised to see Ryan standing outside. His family had already left. "Hey," he said, smiling as he noticed me. "Are you okay?" Something about his genuine concern made me pause. I nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay. Thanks for asking." "You don't have to say that if you're not," he replied, sincerity in his eyes. I can tell when someone's putting on a brave face. I couldn't help but like how considerate he was. For the first time since leaving Mark, I felt seen without the pressure or manipulation. We talked for a few more minutes, exchanging thoughts about the city, favorite restaurants, even a shared love for books. Then Ryan excused himself, leaving me with Ava, who had watched the interaction with a knowing smirk. "So," she said, elbowing me gently, "I think there's potential here." I laughed, shaking my head. "I like the thought, but I can't just jump into a relationship. I don't know anything about him. I can't rush like that." "Fair enough," Ava said, still teasing but supportive. "You take your time. But don't ignore the good people who actually respect you." We walked back to her apartment, a lightness in my step that had been missing for weeks. But as fate would have it, the universe wasn't done nudging me. The next day, we stopped at a bakery. As we entered, I froze slightly. There was Ryan again, standing near the display, casually glancing around. Ava and I shared a surprised look. "Looks like you're seeing a lot of him," Ava whispered, elbowing me. I shrugged, heart racing slightly. "Coincidence, I guess." Ryan noticed us, smiled warmly, and waved us over. We chatted casually. Ava mentioned my love for cheesecake, just in passing. Ryan disappeared for a moment and returned with 2 slices, handing one to me. I blushed fiercely. "Oh, thank you," I said softly, touched by the thoughtful gesture. The small act of kindness made my chest flutter in a way I hadn't felt for a long time. We talked for a little while longer, laughter flowing easier than before. Eventually, Ryan excused himself again, leaving Ava and me to finish our treats. Ava teased me relentlessly on the way back to the apartment, clearly enjoying my blushes and stammering responses. Later that evening, Ava casually mentioned that Ryan had asked about me and wondered if it was okay to give him my number. I paused. My chest tightened with excitement, but also hesitation. "Yes," I said finally. "It's okay." And so it began. Ryan and I started talking. Texts turned into calls, calls into dates. He was everything Mark was not. Thoughtful, genuinely kind, respectful. He complimented me when I took care of myself, boosted my confidence when I was down, and always made me feel like a priority, without demanding it. I began to feel alive again, like my old self, maybe even a better version of her. Of course, Mark eventually got wind of this. His texts and calls shifted from smugness to panic. Apologies, promises to change, declarations of love, all frantic, desperate, and empty. One day, I picked up his call briefly, letting him start with his usual pleas. Then I finished. "Mark, I'm done. Do not contact me again. Ever." I hung up, and then, without hesitation, blocked him on all platforms. Months later, while Ryan and I were out for a casual stroll, I spotted Lauren, the woman from the restaurant incident. She smiled as she approached. "I heard about you leaving Mark. Good for you." I blinked, surprised but grateful. "Thanks. That really means a lot." She nodded, genuine warmth in her eyes. "And congrats on the new relationship. You deserve someone who treats you right. What Mark did, it was disrespectful. Unforgivable." We talked briefly, exchanged some pleasantries, and then went our separate ways. The encounter felt oddly validating, like a subtle confirmation that I hadn't been imagining the toxicity all those years. And there I was, walking hand in hand with Ryan, feeling lighter, stronger, happier than I had in years. It was the kind of peace that comes from finally leaving behind what's harmful and opening yourself up to something real, kind, and unexpectedly beautiful.